Guys, welcome back. In this lecture video, I'd like to teach the direct memory access, the DMA, which is in fact one of the most important concepts. Uh, I'll show you the diagram of a direct memory access. Oh yeah, oh this is the timing diagram. Just give me a second. Perfect, yes. See, the one of the most important thing, or one way to get the data into and out of the systems quickly is using the direct memory access. So it is basically a circuit which can read data from an input device or input output device such as a serial port or a network. Then it can write it in the memory, or read from the memory, or write it into the input output device. It can read data from an input output device and write it to the memory, or it can read data from the memory, write it to the input output device. Okay. However, it has got some kind of problems for the hardware designers to resolve. The most importantly, the first difficulty is that memory only has one set of address and data signals. And the direct memory access, the DMA, must make sure that it is not trying to drive those signals and that at the same time as the microprocessor is trying to drive them. See, there shouldn't be a simultaneous approach. There shouldn't be a simultaneous approach because there is only one set of address and data lines. And it should make sure that it is not trying to drive those signals which the microprocessor is also trying to drive. So simultaneously, microprocessor and the DMA shouldn't drive or shouldn't try to drive those same signals. See, it is how can this particular issue be solved? This is usually solved in a manner similar to this particular picture which is shown. They will discuss transferring data from the input output device to the RAM. Okay, the process for moving data in the other direction is also simple. From RAM to input output device is also simple. When the input output device has some data to be moved into the RAM. Okay, first it assets the DMA request signal to the DMA circuit. When input output data, when the input output device has some data which it needs to go to the RAM, it asserts a signal saying DMA request. That is, it is requesting the DMA. Okay. Now what the DMA does? The DMA asserts the bus request signal to the microprocessor. Okay. The input output device asserts a DMA request to the DMA, and the DMA asserts a bus request signal to the microprocessor. When the microprocessor is ready to give up the bus, it is not executing instructions. Okay, it is not executing instructions for the short period during which the DMA does its work. It asserts the bus acknowledge signal. Okay, when microprocessor has asserted the bus acknowledge signal, the DMA circuitry, it places the address into which the data is to be written. Okay, it is generally placed on the address bus. It places the address on the address bus into which the data is to be written. Okay, after placing the address into the data bus, it says DMA acknowledge. This is an acknowledgement to the input output device, and asserts write to the RAM. And it asserts, see, this is what, here it asserts the write signal to the RAM. Here it is sending an acknowledgement, and here it is asserting the write signal to the RAM. Now the input output device puts the data on the data bus for the RAM and completes the writing cycle. I hope you got it. Now I'll explain once again. The input output device sends a request to the DMA, and DMA then puts a request to the microprocessor, and then the DMA places the address onto which the data should be written, and it says DMA acknowledgement signal, and it places the address into which the data is to be written, right, and acknowledgement signal back to this input output device, and it asserts write to RAM. Okay, here it puts an acknowledgement, and here it says write to RAM. Then the input output device puts the data onto the data bus. I hope you're clear with this. Then once the data has been written, then the signals, see, these are all the signals put, they have to be released. So once the data has been written, it releases the data acknowledgement signal, and this releases the bus request signal. The microprocessor releases the bus acknowledgement signal, and now it continues executing the instructions. This is how it works. Got it? And this important thing is, there is a timing diagram for this, which is very important, very important. I'll show you the timing diagram. Yes, this is a timing diagram. Okay. Yes. Here it has a timing diagram. One is cross hatching in the address, and the data bus indicates something. I'll explain you the timing diagram. Okay. Say for example, the DMA can be edge triggered. What can the DMA can be edge triggered? Meaning that it will transfer a byte. It will transfer a byte, that is 1 byte of data, whenever it sees rising edge. So whenever it sees a rising edge on, see, this is a rising edge, right? You can see. So whenever it sees a rising edge on the DMA request, it will transfer 1 byte of data. So in this particular case, the device which is requesting the data transfer must be lower. The device which is requesting the data transfer must be lower. And after each byte, and raise it again, potentially immediately when it is another byte. See, here the entire byte transfer is done. Once it is transferred, the thing is getting low. Okay, this is meant by the DMA can be edge triggered. This is called DMA is edge triggered, and the DMA can be level triggered. So this is called being level triggered because it is maintaining the same level. It is maintaining the same levels everywhere. So level triggered, meaning that it will transfer the bytes of data as long as this remains high, as long as the DMA request remains high. And so in this case, the input output device can hold a DMA request as long as the data transfer or bytes of data is being transferred. The moment, see here, this is the moment where the last data is transferred. The moment the last byte transfer is over, it gets back to low. It has to be low. It has to be low. Okay. This is edge triggered. That is, it is transferred 1 byte of data. It is transferring 1 byte of data. Here it is maintaining a level, that is continuous transferring of data is happening. And here at this point, the last byte of data is transformed, and here it is down. Got it? So this is what the timing diagram is all about. It is very simple. The timing diagram is very simple. You can draw the same diagram at your examination, and make sure you're drawing and you're putting, because this part is very important, the DMA request part, because anything happens on the request of this, because this is the first request which the input output device is putting onto the direct memory access. So that's the reason it is very important. So that is regarding the direct memory access. Yes, perfect. And one thing is very important which I would like to tell you is the shared data problem. Remaining interrupt latency and that thing, I think you can find those all in Google, but these shared data problem and all, these are a bit complicated. So I would like to explain the shared data problem, and then I most probably end up the first unit. Okay. This is a good example of a shared data problem. Okay. This is based on the interrupt. Okay, this is based on an interrupt. Say for example, just give me a second. I'll introduce you the definition of an interrupt, so that this shared data problem and all would be quite pretty much easy for you. Yeah. So first of all, what is an interrupt? First of all, what do I mean by interrupt? See, there is something called interrupt latency. What is interrupt? What is an interrupt? See, basically, an interrupt is nothing but a signal to the processor which is emitted by the hardware or software. It indicates that there is an event, there is something which needs immediate attention. Okay, there is something which needs immediate attention. Whenever an interrupt occurs, the controller completes the execution of that particular instruction and it starts the execution of the ISR, that is interrupt service routine, or it is also called as the interrupt handler. This ISR tells the processor what to do when an interrupt occurs. The interrupt can be a hardware interrupt or a software interrupt. I hope you know the definition of polling as well. See, the state of continuous monitoring is called polling. The state of continuous monitoring is called polling. See, the microcontroller, what it does, it keeps checking the status of other devices. And while doing that particular task, it does no other operation and it consumes all its processing time only for monitoring. See, interrupts is like a shopkeeper, okay? If one needs a service or a product, he or she goes to him, apprises him of his needs. But a polling method is like a salesperson. The salesman goes to door, requesting them to buy products, etc., 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 etc. So, interrupt is like a shopkeeper, polling is like a salesperson, right? So, interrupt is nothing but a signal which needs a signal to the processor which is emitted by a hardware or software, indicating that there is an event which is very important and it needs the attention. Okay, this is basically an interrupt, the definition of an interrupt. Just put this in mind. When you're using interrupts, make sure your interrupt routine needs to communicate with the rest of the code. This is one problem. For various reasons, it is like, see, the ones which we are discussing are neither possible, nor desirable for the microprocessor to do all the work. Therefore, say for example, an interrupt routine need to signal the task code to do follow processing. So let me illustrate you the classic shared data problem. It is also called as data sharing problem. This is generally encountered when you start using your interrupts. Say for example, consider this particular code. This is normally a part of a nuclear reacting monitoring system. This code is a part of nuclear reacting monitor system. This code monitors two temperatures which are always supposed to be equal. If they differ, it indicates a malfunction in the particular reactor. See, the main function in this particular stays in an infinite loop. See, I put while true, that is, it is an infinite loop. It is in an infinite loop, making sure that the two temperatures are same. And here is an interrupt routine. We read temperatures. So this is an interrupt routine. We read temperatures. Happens periodically. That is, the temperature sensing hardware interrupts if at least one or both the temperatures change, or a timer interrupts every few milliseconds. The interrupt routine reads the new temperatures. So the idea is that the system will set off a howling. It gives you an alarm if the temperatures turn to be different. Okay, if temperatures turn to be, I'll just give you a task. Just try to find out if there is any bug in this. If there is any bug in this particular example. So basically the point is, if there is any change in the temperature, alarm should sound. So what is the problem in this particular program? The point is, it sets off the alarm when it shouldn't. Okay. say for example both the temperatures are some 70 degrees, 70 for a while. Say for example both the temperatures are some 70 degrees. Both elements of these arrays I temperatures are equal to 70. See, now that the microprocessor has just finished executing the line code setting I temp 0 to 73. Say for example this is some set to 73. And suppose let this be like I temp 0 is equal to I temp 0. We set this to some 73. I set this I temp 0 to 70, some 70 stuff. Now suppose that the interrupt occurs now and both the temperatures have changed to some 71, 71. Now the interrupt routine, what it does, it writes the value 71 into both the elements. When the interrupt routine ends, the microprocessor will continue with this line of code. It will continue with this line of code. So since both are 73, I temp of 1 will be set to 73. When the microprocessor compares the I temp of 0 and I temp of 1, see, here we are comparing if this not equal to this. Here if it is 73, so first instruction, the execution of first instruction, when the interrupt routine ended, the microprocessor will continue with this line of code, and that is the moment it is ended, it will continue with this line of code. And here you're using an if condition to compare these two temperatures. So the moment it changed from 70 to 71, that is when if you're having an if condition, the moment when the microprocessor compares, if temp 0 and temp 1 in the next line, they will differ. And this system will set off the alarm even though the two measured temperatures were always same because of a small bug in this code. See, just go through it. I'll again re-explain. Let the both temperatures are some 60. Both elements of these I temperature arrays are equal to 60, and the microprocessor has just finished executing this line of code. Say it set I temp 0 to 73. That is this. It has finished execution. I temp 0 is this is 73. Some 60. Sorry, let it be some 60. I temp 0 equal to 60. Now some interrupt has occurred, and both I temp 0 and I temp 1 have changed to 61, and both the values are written into these temperatures. I temp 0 has 61, and even I temperature of 1 also has 61. And say for example the interrupt routine has ended, and now see, when this line is executing, an interrupt routine occurred, so the microprocessor started working on that particular interrupt. I told you an interrupt is nothing but a signal which needs a special attention. So by the time this line is getting executed, the microprocessor stopped working on this line. It went, finished that interrupt, the service to that particular interrupt, and it again came back to this code. Now by the moment the interrupt routine has ended, the microprocessor will again start its execution from here. Now anyways, both the elements have got 61. Here is also 61. After writing the value to 61, there is an interrupt occurred. It finished working on to that particular interrupt. Now it started working on this line, and when here there is an if condition. When you are working on this if condition, even though both values are same, it set it off the alarm. It will set off the alarm. But the point is, when temperatures are changing, you want the alarm to howl, right? Say for example, I'll just change the code in a very simple way. I'll just do it manually for you guys. So what we did, I'm coding this manually for you guys so that you'll understand it more better. So the code is, in general, I'm having an interrupt. So this is the original code, right? Void interrupt VREAD. I'm just putting it as temp of void, right? And I'm having say if one is I temp, let one be I temp of 0 is equal to something, and I temp of 1 is equal to something, and this is my interrupt. Right, now I'm writing my main function, void main, void main. Okay, and I'm declaring my variables, those int I temp 0 comma I temp 1, and now I'm putting this all in an infinite loop. I'm putting this all in this is a C language code, just don't worry. Okay, it's a C language code, and I'm putting all this as an infinite loop, and I'll say while true. While true, and if I say I temp 0 equal to I temp this, and the next line would be yes, and this is simply I temp 1, and this is, oh, I've given the same variables, right? I'll have temperature yes, and here I'm just putting up if condition, if I temp 0 not equal to I temp 1. Okay, this is the code, and I said there is some kind of bug in this. How do I fix that? It is the same code. Okay, it is the same code. It is, say for example, I'll just make a changes to the same code in such a way that I'm adding one more cell, and I'll put something. I'll just remove this stuff from this. Okay, and this, in this new code, instead of, I'll now directly compare the temperature values. So this, I think this would fix my bug. Perfect. So so just put a contrast between two codes. See, the code in this is the same as the before one. So what I did is, here it is not copying in I temperature, but it is directly copying the changes in the directly of I temperatures. Okay, it is directly copying to I temperatures, and I'm comparing, I'm running an infinite loop, and I'm trying to compare those directly here. Okay. So the problem is that this particular statement compares I temperatures of 0 with I temperatures of 1, and can be interrupted. Although the microprocessor usually will not interrupt individual assembly language instructions, it can interrupt the statements, C language statements, because the compiler mostly transfers the statements into multiple assembly language instructions. The statements that compares turns into assembly language. Okay, this turns into assembly language saying move R1 of temperature, move R2 temperature, subtract R1, R2, something, some assembly language code. It changes into some kind of assembly language code. Say for example, what happens if the interrupt occurs between the line of code, like, see, because these are loaded into some registers, what if an interrupt occurs then? If before loading, this loads into the value R1 and this loads into the value R2, and both the temperatures are say 60 degrees before the interrupt, occurred and both the temperatures are say 61 after the interrupt. Then the register R1 loaded before the interrupt will have the value 60 and register R2 will have the interrupt 61. That is this when loaded assembly language. I just put it in Telugu. The assembly language code lo marinappudu I temperature of 0 it will become R1 and this it loads to the register R1 and it loads to the register R2. So interrupt rakamundu this R1 value would be some 61. Interrupt after loading this value would be 61. This would be 60 and this would be 61. I am repeating it again. The I temperature of 0 loads అంటే interrupt occurs between the line of the code, that is loads the value into register R1. ఇది register R1 లో లోడ్ అయింది, ఇది register R2 లో లోడ్ అయింది. ఓకే, both the temperatures 60 ఉన్నాయి before the interrupt occurred and after the interrupt occurred 61 అయిపోయాయి. అప్పుడు after the interrupt ఏమైంది, then the register this R1 ఇది R1 లో ఉంది కదా, R1 loaded before the interrupt will have you the 61. అంటే interrupt ముందున వాల్యూ R1 లో ఉంటుంది. Register R2 which is loaded after the interrupt will have a value 61. అంటే దీనికి interrupt ముందు లోడ్ అయినప్పుడు 60 ఉంటుంది, దీనికి R2 లో స్టోర్ చేసాం కాబట్టి after loading after the interrupt it will have 61. Okay, just remember interrupt routine will never change the value in the register. It has no way of knowing what kind of values are present in the register. Okay, so this is what a shared data problem is. So very important and basic concepts these are all. Interrupt routines must save the context and they have to restore the context. There are two sections called atomic section and critical section. Set of instructions should not be interrupted if the system is to work properly, and that is called critical sections. A set of instructions that must not be interrupted if the system is to work properly, and a set of instructions that will not be interrupted because interrupts are disabled. Say for example, if interrupts are disabled, the set of instructions that will not be interrupted is said to be atomic, and the set of instructions that must not be interrupted if the system is to work properly is called critical section. And interrupt latency is nothing but the amount of time it takes a system to respond to an interrupt is called interrupt latency. The amount of time it takes for a system to respond to an interrupt is called interrupt latency. And there are several factors which contribute to your interrupt latency. To keep interrupt latency low, we must make sure the interrupt routine short, and we have to disable the interrupts for short period of times. We have to make our interrupt routines short, and we have to disable the interrupts for short period of time to maintain the low interrupt latency. So just brief stuff about interrupt latency. It is like what do I mean by making the interrupt routine short? Okay, for example, you're writing a system that controls a factory, and every second a system gets dozen of interrupts to which it must respond promptly and to keep the factory running smoothly. Say for example, my system monitored a detector that checks for gas leakage, and my system must call the fire department and it should shut down the affected part of the factory if a gas leak is detected. Now that it is very likely that interrupt routine that handles glass leakage needs to be relatively of high priority, and it would be probably a bad idea for the other interrupt routines to get the microprocessor attentions. Firstly, especially if those interrupt routines open and close electrical switches. System needs to continue operating the unaffected part of the country, so the gas leakage interrupt routine must not take up too much time. Say if calling the fire department is a process that will take several seconds at least, is included in the gas leakage interrupt routine, then dozens of other interrupts will pile up while this particular thing is going on. So that interrupt should be given priority, detecting a gas leakage and informing it to the fire department. That should be given priority, right? Therefore, a process that will take several seconds shouldn't be included in the highest priority interrupt routine, because if it is included, let it take 10 seconds, then the other will take some more 10 seconds, then will take 30 seconds is lost, 10 plus 10 plus 10, 30 seconds is lost, and the interrupt routine of the highest priority is being delayed, then there is no point even after 1 minute if it detects the leakage of the gas. So that's the example for making your interrupt routines short. Okay. Disabling interrupts. Disabling is, you have a disable interrupt, say for I need to disable an interrupt for 125 microseconds to use a temperature variables, or for my task code to use a pair of temperature variables. It shares with the interrupt routine that reads the temperature from the hardware and writes it into the variables. Say for example, I need to sometime disable my interrupt for some particular 250 microseconds. Sometimes I need to disable it for 625 microseconds. I need to disable it for some time, right? So what do I actually do? Is there any alternate for disabling an interrupt? Yes, disabling an interrupt for only short period of time. You can't disable an interrupt for hours and hours of time. Just because the detecting of gas leakage is a high priority interrupt, I need to put it in the first phase, and at the same time, once it is over, I shouldn't disable it for a long time. Disabling can only be done for a small number of microseconds, not even one huge second. It needs to be done only for small number of microseconds. So that is regarding interrupt latency. Interrupt latency is nothing but amount of time taken or time it takes a system to respond to a particular interrupt. And the most important key factors are, you have to make your interrupt routine short, and you have to disable your interrupt routines for only short periods of time. That is it, and that's it. I think I've covered almost each and everything. Make sure you go through these lecture videos a lot, and at the same time make sure you're revising a lot, because I've mentioned a lot of good definitions, and I've mentioned a lot of good examples also, the codes and the diagrams. All the diagrams which I have used, or which I've explained, are very key and important diagrams. Make sure you draw them in your examination hall, and the diagram for the DMA and the timing diagrams are also most important. I hope everything is clear. In case if any more doubts are regarding this, you can just post it in the comment section, and I'll get back to you guys. So that's it, and I hope you're also pretty much well versed with the shared data problem. It's very simple. We are just directly, the solution is, we are just directly running an infinite loop and putting an if condition directly to these values. I'm not again storing them, and I'm not comparing those two. I'm directly comparing the values. That's it. That is the solution for the shared data problem. Here I'll find a bug, most probably. Here it doesn't occur. So that is the thing. I hope you're all pretty much well versed with this lecture videos. And in the next video, I think I'll be starting the second chapter, that is the real-time operating system. I'll be teaching the round robin with interrupts, function queue scheduling architecture, real-time operating system architecture. That's it. And thank you guys. Thank you.